Radio TV phono nut here, and we don't get into cassette recorders much, but here's something someone sent me here the other day. Post office finally got around to bringing it to me. This is a 21st century, made in China, Sony cassette recorder it's seen better days, but more about that later. If you get on eBay and look for these, they're all over the place. They're certainly not uncommon. But what makes this one a bit uncommon is it's has been modified for talking book playback and recording for the visually impaired. You might ask yourself what makes a talking book cassette recorder different from an ordinary cassette recorder. Well, here's a talking book cassette tape, and even though they look like an ordinary cassette tape that you'd see anywhere else, the way in which they're recorded is different. Whereas a regular cassette tape for consumer use that you might buy or might record on with such a player like this will be a mono 2-track cassette recorded at 1 7/8 inches per second, which is the standard cassette speed. But sometime back in the 70s, when the National Library Service started switching from talking books on records to cassette tapes, they first went with 1 7/8 2-track cassette, but by the end of the 70s they had switched to 4-track cassettes recorded at 15/16 inches per second, and then pretty soon that pretty much became the standard format for all recorded material on cassettes for the visually impaired. Now, why did they do that? Number one, so they could get more material on a cassette tape, and number two is because of copyright concerns. As far as the stuff that the talking book library produces, the only way they're allowed to produce that is it has to be produced in a format that cannot be accessible by the general public. And since most cassette recorders and players that the average person could buy at Walmart or wherever won't play the special 4-track cassettes, then that they're in the clear on that. This particular recorder was modified by Innovative Rehabilitation Technology Incorporated, and I remember another company that sold modified versions of consumer cassette recorders. I think Recordings for the Blind and Dyslexic also offered a model. Most of the ones I remember were made by Panasonic and Sony, and as far as your choices for 4-track machines, you could get the loaner player from the Library of Congress, but the disadvantage to that one is it would only play back, it would not record, and of course that was not your player, that was simply a loaner. Now, the advantage to it is if it broke, you could send it back in and they'd send you another one without cost. Well, the second option would be to buy one of the American Printing House for the Blind cassette recorders that were actually manufactured for 4-track talking book use, but those things were a bit on the pricey side. I want to say around $250 to $300 for one of the desktop versions, and the little handy cassette model, I think it was about $150, and I wasn't very impressed with those little handy cassette models, especially not the second version, but that's a story for another day. You can see on this one where they added the necessary switches. We have a speed control switch for standard and NLS speed, which is the 15/16 speed, and then we have our track change switch, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then on the side we have a knob for variable pitch as well as a tone index push button. Now, what that does is it allows you to place a low frequency tone on a cassette tape that you're recording, and when you're playing the tape back at normal speed, this tone will not be audible. However, when you're playing the tape back and fast forward or rewind, you'll be able to hear the tone as a high frequency tone, and you'll know to stop the machine at that point and play your selected passage. Okay, a friend who sent this to me told me that it just up and stopped working one day, and at that point he decided to not fool with it anymore, and he just sent it to me and told me to have fun with it. So I put a set of batteries in it, and sure enough it was dead as a doornail, but then I manipulated the batteries and it took off and started going, so we probably have a bad, dirty battery contact. As you can see, it's running, so let's put a tape in it and see what happens. Well, hold it. It would help if I'd set it to the right speed. Let's see if that'll do better.
Those prevented from reading by visual or physical disability. Choice Magazine Listening presents a wide range of significant writing without necessarily endorsing the viewpoints expressed. This recording is tone indexed. On any track containing 2 or more articles, the beginning of the second article, as well as the beginnings of subsequent articles on that track, will be indicated by a beep, audible when your cassette player is in the fast forward or rewind mode. Track by David Hayden.
Okay, I've got it wide open, and
7 minutes.
That's as loud as it gets.
George and John by David Brooks.
Use our pitch control.
Escape to Mount Kenya by Matthew Power. National Geographic Adventure. 40 minutes. Track 5. The Chilean Girls. Fiction by Mario Vargas Llosa. The Virginia Quarterly Review. 37 minutes. A Life in the World by Pico Ayer. Condé Nast Traveler. 17
Now, I don't remember how much these cost when they were new, but
by George Johnson, The New York Times.
they were a lot cheaper than the American Printing House
Andrea Jones.
models, and that's what made these attractive to a lot of folks. Alright, here we are opened up, and you can see they used a potentiometer and some resistors and some switches to control the motor speed. And for the tape track, what they did was just installed a stereo tape head and configured the left and right channels to play the 4-track format. This is the reason our operation was intermittent. You see that battery contact is kind of corroded, so we're going to scrape that off. That might also improve our low volume issue. If it's corroded enough where it was still making contact but yet causing a resistance, that could starve the tape recorder for voltage, so we'll try that first. And we'll clean the pot and switches and see how it does. Well, now I got it back together, and now it's totally dead, and no manipulation of the batteries will bring it to life. So I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I'm not very inclined to do much to it. Whoever did the conversion did a very neat job. That was nicely done, but let's just say the overall quality of this Sony cassette recorder, it's not your Sony cassette recorder from 1970, let's put it that way. It's just a 21st century piece of China pride. But yeah, I have that contact out, and you can see how corroded it is. I'm going to go get some sandpaper and work on this and see if that'll bring it back to life. Here's what was rattling around inside, old plastic pieces of the cassette door that broke. And I'm sure that broke very easily. You know how this modern plastic is, and when it gets a little age on it, it becomes brittle and snaps if you even look at it funny. So And these freaking things are not made to be worked on. You just can't fold the top back over and sit it back on and put the 5 screws in. No, it's got to be an act of freaking Congress. Alright, I kept fiddling with it. This thing is not the easiest to get back together. I'd get it back together, it wouldn't work. I'd pull it apart, the battery contacts would pop out. I kept working with it, and it finally is making contact. Now let's see if it even plays. Right, where's the volume control?
On any track containing 2 or more articles, the beginning of the second article, as well as the beginning of subsequent
it is louder now.
Is indicated by a beep. Audible from your cassette player is in the fast-forward or rewind mode. Track 1, Family Dinner, by Gary Steingart, David Sedaris, and Anthony Lane. A tight touch of warm, sweaty coins gathered up in my pocket. And then he hit me. He always hit in exactly the same place, between the shoulder and the elbow, on the bone. He was very good at this, but if he
that was the track switch, dummy.
23 minutes. Today, Lewis
Armstrong Made Noise by David Margolick, the New York Times.
Okay, why is the speed not working? Because the speed switch was stuck between positions.
Elizabeth Colbert, the New Yorker, 43 minutes. The Lime Room, Fiction,
by John Burnside, Granta, 10 minutes on this track. Track 3, The Lime Room, concluded, 54 minutes on this track. Track 4, Tenor of the Times, by David Hayden.
But we have a little more volume now.
7 minutes.
And that's probably about as much volume as it ever had, so it's probably working normally.
New York Times.
The way this works is when it gets to the end of side 1, there'll be an instruction that tells you to continue, take the tape out, which is a little hard to do since the door is missing, and flip it over to side 2. And then at the end of side 2, it will tell you to change side selector switch to the sides 3 and 4 position, and then you take the tape out, flip it back over again, where side 1 is facing upward. And then at the end of that side, they'll tell you to take the tape out, flip it over again, and then when it's through, then that concludes that cassette. And then if it's a multi-cassette book, then you would flip the switch back to sides 1 and 2 and start over again. Alright, here's a commercially available music cassette. Now keep in mind, because of the way this head is wired, you're only going to hear one channel of a stereo music cassette. And it also appears that the pitch control doesn't work in the 1 7/8 position. It only works in the 15/16 position. Now if you notice, whenever I flip the side selector switch to the other side, you can hear the track on the other side of the tape running backwards. I wonder if the copyright filter, police, whatever will pick up on that. This tape's about shot. One reason it's not playing well is because the little felt pressure pad's gone. If that was replaced, it would probably play okay. Alright, here's one that still has the pressure pad in it. Except all the girls get prettier at closing time. Let's flip it and see. Kind of what it sounds like. Whoops, hang on. Okay, so it's not that. Alright, let's see if this thing will record. We're set to the 15/16 IPS position and set to sides 1 and 2. So we'll put it in record mode and let the leader tape run out. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see how well this tape recorder records. And then we're going to flip it over to sides the 3 and 4 position and see if this will actually record on 4 tracks, or is this just a 2-track recorder. Alright, let's see if it played my voice back. 3, 4. Let's see how well this tape recorder records. And then we're going to flip it over to sides 3 and 4 position and see if this will actually record on 4 tracks, or is this just a 2-track recorder. Now, I forgot there was something else on that tape too, so we're hearing the... Alright, flip it to sides 3 and 4. Okay, will this thing record on sides 3 and 4 without erasing sides 1 and 2? Blah, blah, blah. Let's find out. Okay, will this thing record on sides 3 and 4? Records. And then we're going to flip it over to sides 3 and 4 position. Well, apparently it does. Not the best quality in the world, but I'm not really surprised by that. So apparently you can record on all 4 tracks. Now, it would be better to record on the 1 7/8 position. That would give you better fidelity. Okay, we're going to record this on the 1 7/8 position, and we're going to check our tone index to see how well it works. So we'll hold this button in for about 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was that 5 seconds? I don't really know, but we will stop the machine now, rewind the tape. Okay, so we ran out of film and the bottom's about to fall out, but yeah, this thing really doesn't record that well, and it records better on the 3 and 4 position. You can hear that's our tone index, that noise you heard there, but this is really better for playback than anything else. And if you're going to record on something, a 4-track recorder like this, you really need to start with a fresh tape. If you have a bulk eraser, erase it and get all the old material off of it. Now to end this, I'll show you some older talking book cassette players. This is an American Printing House for the Blind 4-track model from 1982. This is one of the $200-something models that was made especially for APH by GE, and you know, the quality shows. It's daylight and dark between this one and the little made in China Sony. You know, I'm not meaning to show to be unappreciative of the Sony. That's just the way it is. I will keep the Sony around here and put it to use, but you know, that's just the way it is. These older ones are built better. And this is basically has the same features as the Sony, just a better built machine. And APH made versions of this up until, about 2007 or 8. The last version would actually play standard stereo cassettes in mono through the built-in speaker, or in stereo with headphones, or you could flip a switch to enable the 4-track format. Here's an early GE from 1970. This is a recorder, property of U.S. government, so this was one of the library-issued machines. This is just a 2-track machine, but it will play 15/16 and 1 7/8. We have a battery level meter, volume and tone controls, and our standard function controls. This machine doesn't work at all. Somebody's jake-legged it, and I need to open it up and figure out what somebody tried to do to it. And I think there was also a play-only version of this machine, and I think there might have been a 4-track version of this a little bit later. Here's another similar model. This is one of the APH machines. It's a little bit different from the library machine, and where this one, instead of a battery level meter, they have a variable pitch control and a tone index insertion button for recording, but other than that, it appears to be just like the Library of Congress machine. And got to dig it out. I don't feel like digging it out right now, but I still have my C1 library issued machine. A few years ago, when they phased out cassettes, they put a notice in the newsletter saying that cassettes had been phased out, and they wanted and that they wanted everybody to return their cassette machines because they were government property and blah blah blah. Which, of course, you know what would happen to them. They just send them to the crusher, and that would be the end of it. Well, I emailed my library and told them I still had a bunch of cassettes, which is not a lie, and would it be possible for me to keep it? And they never messaged me back, so I took that as a yes. And they also made, in the 1990s, a combination record player and cassette player, which I have one of those. But yeah, like I said earlier, pretty much everything now is digital. There are no materials issued on analog. You either get them on digital cartridges or you can get them via digital download. And I also have a couple of junk Library of Congress machines. One's a green C79 and the other one's a red C78. They're both basically the same thing as a C1, just a different case color. Those were given to me by a friend who's been sending me a lot of stuff, and he got them from I think one of the Telephone Pioneer guys or somebody who repaired machines for the library. They were ones that they had condemned, and he just wanted them for display purposes. So, you know, they gave them to him with their blessing. He also sent me a red A78 record player that I believe is one they sent him, and I think whenever he got tired of it, he asked them, told them about me, and they told him, you know, if you want to send it to him, send it to him. We don't want it back. So, you know, there you go. Well, did I say red C78 machine? I apologize. I guess I was thinking about the red A78 record player. I've got a orange C76 cassette machine and a green C79 machine, and my library issued C1 machine, and like I said, they're all basically the same, just a different color. They were made by Telex, and you know, appearance wise they're very heavy duty, well built, but they just don't seem to hold up very well, not as well as the record players did anyway. But like I said before, that's really no big deal, because when one of mine messed up, and yes, I've been through several of them, all I had to do was call the library and they would send me a replacement machine, and I'd put the other one in a box and drop it off at the post office, and away it would go. And there was also an E1 machine that was pretty much an automatic reverse machine that you could put the cassette in, and it would play all four sides with just the press of a button. So that was meant for users who might have issues operating the dexterity issues operating the controls on a regular machine. But here we go. Here's the
and dimes, enough for a hamburger and a
give you a look at the little Sony machine.
Of redeeming my own dignity, of leaving behind our beat solid heritage.
And it probably does need a speed touch-up, but
because they lived with the idea that disaster.
There should be a pot inside the motor. You can adjust that, but I'm not going to tear all that apart just to do that. In order to do it right, you would really need a test cassette and an oscilloscope or a frequency counter and set it correctly. But you know, I can use the pitch control on this to get it right. So
it was close at hand that a liver function tech
would come back not with a doctor's big install, but they would be fired from their jobs
because their English did not suffice. We were all representatives of a shadow society,
cowering under a cloud of bad tidings that would never come. The silver coins
stayed in my pocket, burrowed and expanded into some future ulcer. I was my parents.
All right, there you go. The 21st century Sony cassette player recorder. It was modified for talking book use by innovative rehabilitation technology incorporated. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll come up with some more stuff later. I've got a bunch of things that I want to get to. It's just here lately there's just been so many other things going on. I really haven't had time to do much electronics, but hopefully that'll change here before long. Well, I forgot to mention the reason the volume wasn't getting any louder than it was is because there was a piece of that plastic door hung in the track for the volume control, and it was preventing the control from being slid all the way to the maximum position, so that was easy enough to take care of. Alright, more to come. Alright, here's one of the last magazines from 2013.
Audio magazines are going digital. The magazines you have been receiving on cassette will soon begin arriving on a cartridge. The sound quality is greatly improved, and the convenience of a single cartridge makes playing your magazine simple. Using the advanced digital player, you can even step through each article within a magazine. If you do not yet have a digital talking book machine, your local library will be happy to send you one so you can continue to enjoy audio magazines and books without an interruption in service. Unlike the cassettes, digital magazine cartridges will be reused and therefore must be returned when you have finished reading them, just as you do now with books. The process is the same as with books. Simply place the cartridge back into the plastic container, snap the tabs down, reverse the address card, and place the container in the mail. Audio magazine cartridges are blue and will ship in dark red containers to differentiate them from books. The embossing on the front of the container is different from the book container to help you ensure that the magazine cartridge is returned in the magazine container. If you subscribe to more than one magazine, you may find that the magazine cartridge you receive will contain several magazines. When a cartridge with multiple magazines is inserted into a digital talking book machine, you will hear a short message to guide you to the player's bookshelf, where you can select a magazine to listen to. Read the magazines at your own pace, but remember it is vital that magazine and book cartridges be returned to ensure continuity of service. Magazines on cartridge will be introduced late in 2012, and magazines on cassette will be phased out in 2013. So get ready to enjoy the advantages of better sound quality and ease of use with digital audio magazines from your library.
Side 1, Smart Computing, February 2013. Copyright 2013 by Sandhills Publishing Company. Read by Joanne DeQuinta.
And here's one of the digital cartridges. They come on a cartridge that looks like this. And here's the player. I think I may need to recharge this battery.
Player on. Battery charge remaining 6 hours. If you receive volume up
This magazine on digital cartridge, please remember it must be returned. Magazine cartridges containing only weekly publications must be returned within 3 weeks of receiving them. All others must be returned within 7 weeks. Simply reverse the address card.
volume down.
But yeah, one of the advantages of these newer machines is the battery will last about 20-something hours, whereas the cassette machine batteries were only good for about 6 hours before they needed to be recharged, and there's no moving mechanical parts in the digital machines to wear out, so they last a lot longer. I'm actually on my second one here, and the only reason the first one had to be sent back is because the battery got so it wouldn't hold a charge, and when the batteries get weak in those, they start doing all kinds of weird things, so had to send it back. Alright, there you go. I'm finally through. More to come later.